Call this meeting of the Montgomery County Board of County Commissioners to order. It is now 6 o'clock, Tuesday, May the 19th, 2020. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Moved by Commissioner Matheny. Do I have a second?
Second to approve the agenda.
Second by Commissioner Mack. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. And I don't see anybody here for the public forum, so we will move on down to the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Motion by Commissioner Matheny to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Crisco. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved. Okay, moving on down. Now we are to the county manager's report.
Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. Certainly appreciate the board coming out tonight as we stay under modified stay-at-home orders that still restrict public gatherings. As we discussed at our last meeting, the board, by general statute, still must meet once a month. And I appreciate the board coming out. I also appreciate the board limiting the agenda to only the items that are time sensitive. The consent agenda item tonight, or the two items, the JCPC funding, I believe that passed unanimously by their advisory board. And the child vitality letter and report was a time sensitive matter for the health department. But other than that, really no action items to approve. And again, I appreciate that desire to not be able to conduct public business when the public cannot interact. And as they are still under those modified stay-at-home orders, and we should not have public gatherings of more than 10 people. Hopefully that will change and we can move to phase 2, 5 o'clock this Friday. And so for our June meeting, we can move forward with business of the county. But be rest assured that the county employees are still doing the county of the business, and I certainly appreciate them in these trying times coming to work and providing those essential services. Under the county manager's report, just items for information. As usual, the county departmental reports. If there's any question there about activity of the month, I will be glad to answer that. I have asked the department heads not to attend these meetings while we're still under these modified stay-at-home orders. The CARES Act item on the agenda, I think the board is familiar with that. The federal government passed a stimulus package related to coronavirus. In that package, $4.5 billion was allocated to the state of North Carolina for the General Assembly to allocate. They met and determined that $150 million of that $1.4 billion would be allocated directly to the counties for the counties to recoup any costs related to COVID-19. The county of Montgomery's share was roughly $692,000. So I have completed the paperwork and submitted it in order for those funds to be directly deposited into the county account. And then the county will have to, as we have, set up a general ledger account to manage this fund and to account for expenditures. They've laid out the guidelines the state has of what these funds can be used for. And so the county also in that legislation is responsible for any municipal expenditures. And so the state level is looking to the county level, and then the county to take care of the municipalities under it to ensure that any cost to date related to COVID-19 is cared for. And so as we have been doing throughout this pandemic, the board has been meeting with representatives from the towns, the town mayors, the town managers for the 3 that have managers, and the 2 clerks for the other towns. We have been keeping them abreast of county services, county budgets, and I'll talk about the budget in a minute, the budget session in a minute, and what we've been trying to do collectively there. But we've also been working with the towns to provide them PPE, et cetera. And so since this is a collaborative effort and this $692,000 has been allocated to the county of Montgomery to work with the county and the towns as far as COVID-19 expense, I would like for the board to appoint 2 representatives to continue that conversation. I have to submit, the county manager does, a plan by June 1st for these expenditures to the state. And so I would like to set up a meeting next week, one date that has been put out by the chairman. So I should say maybe the chairman and one other commissioner to meet and to discuss these funds and to come up with a plan to reimburse us and position the county in a best way to handle coronavirus-related issues. So, Chairman, if that pleases you, I will have the clerk get with the representatives that we've already been meeting with the towns, and set up a meeting for Wednesday, May 27th.
Okay, thank you.
And again, the agenda item for that meeting will be to discuss the CARES Act, what the state has allocated to Montgomery County, what the parameters are for those funds, and to coordinate a plan of action to present back to the state. Once that plan of action is put forth, it will still be up to this board as a whole to approve those expenditures. And so it will be presented as a budget item to the entire board. But we work very well with our towns, and so I think that the board as a whole would probably be supportive of a joint project plan that's made up of representatives from the mayors and managers and the board. You want to ask for a second commissioner to participate in these?
I was just getting ready to ask, see if I have somebody that wants to volunteer to meet with the towns.
Well, I can meet if one of the other commissioners wishes to, the other both of them.
Since Jim's retired, he may not be retired, but he might have more time.
Hopefully I might be back at work by then.
Okay. All right, thank you, Commissioner Matheny.
All right, so we will start to work on that. The only other item I really have, again, just for information, is the county budget. We have been working with the towns. The recommendation that was adopted and accepted by the towns were that all of us would adopt continuing budgets in June. Knowing that the effects of this pandemic, knowing that the job loss and unemployment rates are never seen before numbers greater than Depression era numbers, knowing that our sales tax revenue is going to be impacted severely, recognizing that the federal government has hinted that it may allocate funds to hold counties and municipalities harmless for revenue loss for a period of time, that it made good sense to hold off on adopting a budget for FY21 instead of adopting a budget that you turn around and have to modify, the very first meeting, because revenue projections aren't what they are. And so the state general statutes allow for the county to adopt an interim budget for up to 90 days that is just a continuation of operational expense. So all the bills of the county will continue to be paid. It's just that the county cannot do any new capital expenditures. Typically, for example, in our budget every year, we allocate a portion of money for the sheriff to buy cars. He's not going to be able to buy cars on July 1st. He will have to wait till the board approves that full budget, which will be retroactive to July 1, to make any capital purchases. But it will be a continuation. That will give us time to see what funds are going to be recouped through the natural process of opening the economy back up. Also, what funds are going to be allocated by state and federal sources, et cetera. And so all the towns have agreed that we would adopt continuation budgets. We still have to have a public hearing by law. And so you'll see the advertisement in the Montgomery Herald that for our June meeting, we will have 4 public hearings. And we'll have to go through all the formality. I remember your comment last June, Commissioner Crisco, about the entering and exit all the meetings we have to. So you'll have to sit as the fire board for Baden Lake, the fire commission for Tillery, the fire commission for Wayville, and then, you know, as the county board of commissioners. So it'll be that process of going in and out of different meetings as the same body or as the same group of individuals, all to pass continuation budgets. And so CD, the finance director, has been working with the fire departments to let them know they can continue their expenditures, but again, we're going to hold off on any new capital expenditures. Another reason to wait is that our auditors have not been able to go in and meet with the fire departments or with the county for that matter. That the auditing firms are under similar stay-at-home orders, and so they've not been able to come and start all the audit investigations that go with a audit report to close out a year. And so again, for June, our June meeting, we will have public hearings for those 4 items. All of them will be a continuation budget, and we will wait and see how the economy rebounds and what revenues are made available as we move into the first quarter of the new fiscal year. But I'll be glad to answer any questions about the county budget or about the CARES Act or about county operations. We still expect, according to the governor's phase 2 plans, to have enough tests starting Monday if we go into phase 2 to test the general public. The health department will be setting up a drive-by station on the south side of the building. And so people who want to be tested can drive through and receive those tests. As of right now in phase 1, we are just testing people who have symptoms, people that are high risk in a rest home, and first responders. All those folks can come in now and be tested. But as part of phase 2, we have to test X percentage of the population in order to provide numbers to the state that the virus is not spreading. Our quota under this is 45 tests a day. I think we will struggle to get 45 tests a day completed. Not necessarily from a manpower or man-person point of view, but just getting that many people in. We have had an upturn in cases. Yesterday, the health director had to enter 10 new cases locally, and so we are seeing increased numbers. But again, that will be in effect Monday if the governor does indeed call us into phase 2 Friday at 5 o'clock.
That's 692,000. If that's not accounted for, do you have to return it?
Yes, sir, you do. You cannot use it for any revenue loss. You can't say, well, due to COVID-19, our sales tax revenue is down 20%, therefore, that's not one of the permissible uses for it. I do foresee funds coming for that, but not in this range.
Do you have
The cost of these, the cost of my mask, all those are reimbursable costs. Robbie had entered all that in the FEMA portal to be reimbursed by FEMA since there was a state of emergency declared, but the state asked us to back all those expenditures out of FEMA portal because FEMA money requires a 25% match by the state. And these federal dollars require no state match, and so in order to save the state money, they want us to use that 692 for stuff like this. And in our meetings with the towns early on, when we ordered these, we provided these for the towns. We provided the mask. Don Trexler's business here, they started making masks, and Troy ordered some for them, and so we paid for those for Troy, et cetera.
the sales tax? Do you have any thoughts on how much it's gonna be, or how bad it's gonna be, or?
The figures that we got in May were for February. those numbers were not down, it was still February. And so by our next meeting, we will have what the state sales tax figures were in March. That's gonna be the first indication, even though I think it was March 30th that we went to shelter in place. You could already tell by middle of March, people were not out and about. My comments to that, Walmart released that their sales figures were up. Their online sales were up 70%. Why was that? People could order, drive by, pick it up. It was much more convenient. The items that were starting to be in short supply, large manufacturer or large supplier like Walmart had those items. You would not expect Walmart prices not to go up. You would not expect Lowe's not to go up. Everybody was staying at home, so they were doing every handyman job that they could find on honey-do list. Those companies performed well. You will see sales tax from that. As a state, though, you're going to see a huge loss in tourist revenue. North Carolina, I think, is the sixth most visited state. People were not traveling. Montgomery County lobbied several years back for reallocation of sales tax. So not only do we get what we collected and sold here, which probably didn't change too much, we were getting a portion of the bigger state pot. That bigger state pot, yes, it took a big hit. So we will see some decline. The extent of that, between now and then, the state may step in and say, you know, we're going to reimburse all tier 1 and 2 counties for their loss. And they may backfill us and hold us harmless by June. That would be a very nice thing. Scott Brewer has, and I'll defer to Commissioner Henson here because I know he's been in contact with him more than I have, but I've had talks with Scott about pushing those things, you know, trying to backfill for counties like Montgomery, you know, early on for sales tax loss. Since the money's coming from the state, they can hold us harmless. But right now, we're just gonna wait and see. Those March figures will be nothing like they will be in July for April. We know that'll be decimated.
I think the state, Senator Berger, forecast today, I think it was the $4 to $6 billion shortfall in the state revenues, which is so I doubt unless there's federal pass-through that we're gonna get much relief directly from the state.
Not unless they seriously hit hard those rainy day funds, which, you know, it's not gonna last too long for us if this continues, so.
A lot of that's going to unemployment too.
Yep.
If phase 2 were to begin as scheduled, do you have an estimated date of when that drive-through testing will be set up?
If phase 2 goes into effect, if the governor calls it in, then the state should have all the tests to the locals to start it Monday morning. We don't have the test right now.
Or Tuesday?
Yeah,
Tuesday,
more
the
than Tuesday.
The 26th, okay.
Yeah,
But
when
we
we're back
we-
open next week, if
Yeah.
we're in phase 2, we're supposed to have a test and supposed to be performing 45 a day.
Okay.
From what I'm hearing from everybody, I don't know who would want to drive through and have that test.
That's what you're seeing. To go to phase 3, you have to show that it's not spreading and you've tested X number. I don't think we're gonna get it.
Yeah. Yeah, they say it's pretty painful to run that thing up your nose to your brain, if you got a brain, but.
I think the test they're doing now, they're just swabbing either the nostril or the mouth. The original test, they went all the way up through. I don't think there's any pain with the new test. but
And
News reports that several states are having a hard time meeting their quota of the number per day. So I think, you know, we've talked about the benefit of testing, and you could test negative this morning and be positive tonight. But one thing testing does do is you identify the people that are positive and hopefully isolate them and keep it from spreading as much. So I think we need to promote it. And it might be beneficial to, like somebody suggested, I think Grant or somebody suggested going to the individual towns for a day or something, particularly toward the minority population.
Might be beneficial to run an advertisement in the Herald to inform people that we are doing testing so we can meet that 45 a day if we're struggling to reach that number.
Yeah, I don't know procedurally how the tests are gonna work as far as, I mean, they have to keep track of the person that they tested. And you have to obviously wear hazmat materials to administer the test. Where that test has to be stored, it has to be refrigerated immediately, I don't know the particulars of that. To put that show on the road, so to speak, you're gonna have to carry that whole apparatus with you. And I imagine that's very involved. And I imagine there's a large change out of personal gear, and then to decontaminate yourself after you've been that close to somebody, there's gonna have to be that detox station, et cetera. So just not knowing, I would think logistically, it would be very hard to do that. You know, unfortunately, for Montgomery County, we don't have a lot of pharmacies and stuff like that you're gonna see popping up in the bigger places where you have different testing sites. You know, Walmart is getting into the testing business. If they would open one up in Bisco, that would be a great location. I'm assuming that the doctor's offices are still testing. They're definitely testing active people, but, you know, we'll see how this thing plays out. But if we're not getting the 45 a day, and we're all wanting phase 3 to come into place, and we're all hoping that the spread is suppressed, we're gonna have to get out there and find a way to get the numbers.
That's gonna be an issue, the transportation piece, because there's so many people. Tawana said they're still providing the transportation in the county through RCATS with what they can do, but that's gonna be a problem probably, it's transportation.
I received a number of calls regarding hazardous pay for folks that had to continue to work. Now, will this, of this 692,000, can that, a portion of that be used for hazardous pay? We haven't recognized it.
Yes, sir, it can.
Okay.
That is very much a eligible expense.
Now, will they have had to pay that before they can they retroactively pay the employees that had to work?
No, you cannot supplant county funds. Being that you cannot, if you paid the county manager and then you want to say, well, March, April, and May, most of his time was spent with the coronavirus, let's reimburse him. No, you can't do that.
No, but isn't hazardous pay in addition to?
Right, but you would have had to go back, you would have had to pay that at the time it was incurred.
Right, that's what I was
So if
asking.
you would have done, let's say, what Target did, or some of the grocery stores, they increased hourly pay. I think they've stopped it now, but they increased it by $2. If we would have done that, yes, that would have been reimbursable.
Okay. That's what I was trying to find out.
Now, what we did, for example, at the 911 center, typically they work 3 shifts one week for the next. We went ahead and pulled Kyle Mars off mapping and put him back into the rotation, and we only required our employees to work 3 shifts every week. So we relieved them of 1 shift, foreseeing that if 1 or 2 of the telecommunicators became ill, people would start having to work double shifts. We went to shorten schedules. We shortened schedules for social workers, shortened schedules for library staff. So I think we did do things to try to help our employees, but we did not add pay for hazardous pay.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Wood?
No.
Okay, well, June 22nd is our second Board of E&R meeting. As the board is aware, the notices of value were mailed out Friday, and folks are receiving those in the mail this week. In tomorrow's Montgomery Herald, there will be an insert of understanding the tax reval process and how to dissect your property tax card. In addition to that, we will have 3,000 additional ones of those publications, and we will be distributing those to the towns, town halls, to the lake subdivisions that have HOA, so they can get that information out to residents, so they can hopefully understand the process. We are still under these modified stay-at-home orders, and we are limiting the number of people in the building, and so people don't have the access to us. On the notice that they received, which is on the back of this card, it tells folks that due to COVID-19, we're asking you to file your appeal by mail. And so hopefully this will go a long way to answering questions that people have about their tax cards. The new tax cards are available on the website, montgomerycountync.com/GIS. It'll take you to the site where you can pull up your parcel and view your property tax card.
I do see one thing there, Matthew, when it's got on that, the tax rate comparison, it's got 62-67.5, is that, I just noticed there's a couple of them that's got, well, 4 of them's got like 2 numbers there. Is that, what is that reflecting
The one that is, or 2 that are constant, like Moore County, they have a set fire tax rate per district. So it's 9.5 cents for every district.
right?
Whereas in Montgomery County, you have a higher tax rate at Baden Lake than you have at Tillery, than you have at Wapel. And so you have 3. And so most counties are the same as us. The districts have varying values, they have varying rates. Moore County took a one rate for all. If it brings in $1 million, if it brings in 100,000, you just, yeah, they made it a set rate. But most counties are like Montgomery, and they have varying fire district rates. And then Randolph County actually has some some school district rates that are applied, which makes theirs higher.
Anything else?
I will say too that Representative Brewer and Senator Gallimore both signed off on our resolution to abolish the office of coroner in Montgomery County, and that bill has been filed.
Okay. There's no other business or no other comments. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Henson to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Frisco. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?